state. And I am glad to see the two people from Amritsar. Similarly, Chhattisgarh also is very poorly covered with palliative care. So, with the spread in various places, we are going to make a lot of difference, and particularly quite a sizable number of people from ESI, Employee State Insurance Scheme, is one where palliative care had only made a beginning. Uh, and now the Kerala government of Kerala has accepted palliative care as a part of ESI program. So that's also a great beginning and quite a number of people here. So what that means is between us all, maybe in a year or so, we are going to actually see a substantial reduction in suffering. If that is to happen, when the course is over, we must continue to be in touch. Because people from faraway places, like sorry, I don't get the remember the name, the doctor from Andhra Pradesh near Tirupati. When you go back, when the course is over, you are going to be all alone, trying to practice a kind of medicine that you have not done yet, and that can be pretty lonely. You will have 100 doubts. Please continue to remain in touch. Trouble Sunil, trouble me. It's not a trouble really. We would have like to have the opportunity to continue to interact with you. So our objective is very clear. We want to reduce the suffering in this country. Not only in this country, we have somebody from another country, right?
One from Indonesia.
The doctor from Indonesia also. Welcome, doctor. So with that, I will talk to you as your potential patient for tomorrow. I don't know which one of you is going to treat me, but now that you have learned palliative care, I hope you will treat me when my time comes. Like everybody else, I am likely to have a period of illness before I die. Only 10% of us, or at the most 15% of us, die a sudden death. 85 to 90% of us will be bedridden for some time, will go through that process of illness. And at that time, I would like my doctor to acknowledge the doctor's duty to relieve my suffering by training your medical education and my medical education focused on diseases. The biochemistry, physiology, pharmacology, microbiology, pathology, everything laid the foundation. You learned your medicine and surgery and orthopedics and pediatrics and everything and brought it out to diagnosis and treatment. A bit of community medicine talking about prevention, still it's mostly about diseases. Practically none of it was about suffering. And when I am bedridden, I am likely to have several elements of suffering, which may not be only physical. And that's the context in which we are going to do the introduction. I fear that uh, 98% of people in our country do not get treatment of suffering. Indonesia is similar, very similar. Very little palliative care. Local, in a few localities, that's all. That's the content. I don't, can I have the presentation, please? Vaishnav. Thank you. That's okay. So that's my plea. Certainly, I'm not saying ignore my disease, but also treat my suffering. And then I'm going to tell you a sad story. Next, please, Vaishnav. Uh, Doctor from Andhra Pradesh, Dr. Shivayogi. Sorry? Dr. Shivayogi. Dr. Shivayogi. Uh, this couple is from Andhra Pradesh. The child is known. 4 years back, the High Court of Andhra Pradesh, no, not a High Court, it was a municipal court, rejected the plea of this couple. This couple went to court begging for permission to kill their child. Anybody who is very much a little too proud about healthcare in our country, please remember this family. The child had been living with cancer from the age of 1.5. And after another 2 years, he received a lot of treatment. This poor family went into a huge debt. They sold everything, they borrowed, and they can never get out of that debt trap. The child received a lot of chemotherapy, but not pain relief. And they said, we cannot bear to see our child's pain. Please allow us to kill the child. And the court said, no, that is illegal. When the news appeared in the Indian Express, we tried to trace the child. It took us 2 days to find that the child had been in Hyderabad. We have close colleagues. One of the best palliative care centers in India is in Hyderabad in the RCC. We contacted our friends there and they inquired and found that a child had been in a hospital practically that can be seen from the RCC in a corporate hospital. But previous day, they had taken the child away to Bengaluru seeking further treatment. A great human being, one of the volunteers, registered the child in that palliative care unit, got a supply of morphine, and took an overnight bus to Bengaluru. She went to the hospital in which child was being treated. But the child was in an ICU. Dr. Deepam, this is about intensive care. 2 years, we did not give the child pain relief. But when eventually the child was dying, we felt it our duty to snatch the child away from the parents, to isolate in an intensive care unit and give high-tech life support treatment. The morphine stayed outside the ICU. The parents stayed outside the ICU. A day after his 4th birthday, this child died alone, receiving inappropriate treatment in the ICU. Sorry for mentioning such sad, horrendous stories. That child is one of a million people denied of pain relief in our country. At least a million. This is why I asked you to smile. We would need our sense of humor to live with all this and try to make a difference. Can I handle the mouse myself? No, that's okay. Have the next slide on. This is how health is defined officially. You might remember this from long back, from community medicine. Health is complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think, we call ourselves healthcare professionals. Is this the health that we are giving them? Vaishnav, next. As I said, less than 2% of the needy in our country has access to pain relief. Pain can be beyond your ability to imagine or my ability to imagine. This man said he felt like somebody poking a red hot iron into his mandible and keep twisting it. That's what he felt like. I cannot even imagine that happening to me for 1 minute. I've had a patient tell me that he felt like somebody was putting a nail on his ear and hammering it. Again, I can't imagine it once. This is a problem that we have to treat. Next, please. Those are the numbers. I would, Vaishnav, you will be sharing my presentation with the group? Yes, you will be. So look at that reference I have given. That Lancet Commission report is available, free access on the net. Do please look at it. The whole article is about 60 pages long. Doesn't matter. You will read only the first 5 pages, the executive summary. 5 pages, is that too much to ask for? Look at the executive summary of the Lancet Commission report. They say of the 61 million, 7 million are in India. I truly believe that's an underestimate because this count does not take in many kinds of patients. It doesn't include chronic pain. There are 2 interventional pain physicians. These diseases did not include chronic pain. It did not include addiction. It did not include several other things. So when I said 1 million are in pain, in various elements of suffering, we are likely to have 7 to 10 million of people in suffering in our country. So I'm glad there are 60 of us here in this group. We have plenty to do. Next, please. Especially when we consider palliative care is not only end-of-life care, but when we consider end-of-life care, Dr. Param, no, sorry, Deepam, this is where we are. An international agency, Economist Intelligence Unit, did a survey of 80 countries, and India is among one of the worst 15 in terms of end-of-life care by international evaluation. We are 15. We are so low down because we do not treat suffering and because we give inappropriate treatment. Our position would have been much lower. 5 years earlier, they had done an assessment of 40, and we were the 40th, the bottommost. Now we have risen, not because of suffering is relieved, but because one of the indicators was a policy environment which was conducive to development. India has a health policy which includes palliative care. So many things have been done. So you and I have the opportunity now to see an improvement. And it's a privilege to be part of that transformation. You must also remember this. The number of people with destruction by health expenditure. This is not globally there is a problem, but India is particularly bad. 55 million Indians, 5.5 crores, that's more than 4% of population, are pushed below poverty line. See, these 3 authors are of Indian origin. They published in British Medical Journal in 2008, showing that 55 million Indians are pushed below poverty line by catastrophic health expenditure in a year. Doctors, what are we doing? While we are improving the health of some, we are destroying the health of 55 million. When I say we, I mean the health system. I know, I'm not claiming that you are taking the money away. We all need our salary. We have to live something to live on. But the healthcare system that you and I are part of is responsible for this. It is, I said, it is not representative of global figures because look at the World Bank data. You will find that India is among the worst the worst dozen countries. 12, if you take only 12 countries in the world, India and Bangladesh are among the worst 12 as far as catastrophic health expenditure is concerned. All that's a depressing scenario. I didn't mean to depress you. Nevertheless, it's good to be realistic. It's good to acknowledge the problems. I did not mention the positives. Of course, there are many positives in our country. We have state-of-the-art technology. We have many things. But this is also a reality. Next. First of all, though I mentioned death, though I mentioned intensive care, though I mentioned dying, palliative care is not only for end of life. Then when should it happen? What's the ideal time for introduction of palliative care? Who is going to tell me? Either unmute or speak or put it up in the chat box. Who will monitor the chat box, please? When should palliative care start? If it is not enough for end of life, when should it start?
Hello.
Yes.
This can start right at the beginning of the treatment and investigation, because as a clinician we know the course of the disease. Usually, I'm a general surgeon, so it becomes very easy to assess a patient, and then at an appropriate time, because when you come to the conclusion that, for example, an advanced cancer patient reports to you, majority in India, they come in stage 3 or stage 4. There is hardly any education about that. And that's why we can start palliative care right at the beginning of the seeing the patient. That
Dr.
is my
Kale,
opinion.
thank you, Dr. Kale.
Yes.
Absolutely. You can see in the chat box that everybody is agreeing with you. Dr. Anita says, anytime when someone is suffering. Deepam says, whenever a chronic ailment begins. Hey, wait a minute. Deepam, does it have to be chronic? Deepam, if I have an acute illness, if I have a myocardial infarction, I am coming to your ICU, clutching my chest and feeling the weight of a ton. Shouldn't I get pain relief? And shouldn't my family have some support? All of a sudden, they are thinking, what's happening inside? Is he dead? Thanks. Deepam, nowhere in the definition, official definitions, is the word chronic mentioned. And as a matter of fact, there's a growing movement in palliative care where, in humanitarian crisis, like COVID, an earthquake, a flood, the opportunities for palliative care are tremendous. So, thank you, Deepam. That was a good thought. When it begins, we should start, though not necessarily for chronic ailments alone. And Indu says from the beginning of treatment, absolutely, Indu. Param, from the time of diagnosis, yes, if that's at the time when suffering starts. And Harjot says the same. Okay, I think many others have also responded. I'm glad we are all on the same page about this. Thank you very much. We are talking about myself. When my suffering starts, along with your treatment, you should give me palliative care. I'm not saying that my disease need not be treated. Just because I am old, I won't say my disease doesn't have to be treated. When I am suffering, along with the treatment of the disease, as long as we have a correctable problem, and as Vasudha says, at the earliest opportunity, we should start palliative care also. So these are to be integrated with each other, not standing apart in two departments. This is how the WHO defines it. It's too long. Apologies. If I were the WHO, I would apologize to you. Oh my God, 2 kilometers long. See, Vaishnav. So I have definition should be nice and crisp. One sentence and you should catch the whole thing. It's about quality of life. It's about not only the suffering of the patient, but also the family. Of the 60 people, at least 15 people would have gone through a serious illness in your own family. And you would know that with the patient, the whole family is suffering. And for which it's prevention and relief of suffering by treatment of pain and other problems which are physical, psychological, social, and spiritual. So over the next 18 sessions or whatever number, if I am making a mistake, those sessions, these are things that we will talk about. How to take care, how to prevent these elements of suffering and how to treat them. Next, please. And to agree with whatever you said earlier, this WHO definition carries the footnote that palliative care is applicable early in the course of illness. Okay, early in the course of illness, with other therapies that are intended to prolong life. Next. And it is not only for any particular diseases. Next. It is for any serious health-related suffering. That's again from that Lancet Commission report of 2017, any serious health-related suffering. And please note, the aim is quality of life. Whose quality of life? Whose quality of life? Is that a silly question? Will somebody respond? Patient and family, absolutely. Shilpa, thank you. It's not only the patient, but now it's so family, it's about quality of life of patient and family. Others also. Yes, Visha, Shilpa, everybody. Paramjot. Thank you, Krishna. So there is no logical reason why I am picking on breathlessness. But I'm glad I did because Deepam is here, an intensivist. And process of medicine, process of surgery. So many people are here. Look, if I get a car accident, I have 6 ribs broken. I am coming to your hospital without being able to breathe properly. By all means, give me the treatment. Put in a intercostal drain if I have pneumothorax. If there is blood there, drain it. Put me on a ventilator for, you will need it for 2, 3, 4 days. If you can salvage me, even at my age, I would welcome that. But if I am coming to you with advanced cancer, all treatment done, no longer salvageable, and I am coming to your casualty like that, Deepam, maybe you need to rethink. Maybe, why am I talking only to Deepam? As if he is the only one doing intensive care. Before we get to Deepam, we will have the general duty doctor in the emergency room or the general medicine person looking after me. If you know that I have advanced cancer, this cannot be relieved, please, please, please don't isolate me in an ICU. Will you blank the screen? Just press B. B. Press on the letter B. Okay. Because I want to talk to you. At that time, I am in the casualty, gasping for breath. What are the important things for me? Think from my point of view at that point of time. What would be important for me?
Anybody can unmute and speak.
Hello.
Yes.
You have to have a comfortable stay
Thank
there
you.
as long as you are there.
Thank you, Dr. Kale. Thank you, Dr. Kale. That is it. Precisely. I need to be physically comfortable.
Yes.
You have to do the needful, not to prolong my life and stretch out the dying process into 2 weeks by putting me on a ventilator. But whatever remaining time I have, I'm not asking you to perform euthanasia. You don't have to kill me. I'm not asking to be killed. I have to be made comfortable. B again. Just press B. Okay. Is it slideshow? Okay. Check. Is there a correctable condition? Even with advanced cancer, if I have a pleural effusion, you drain it and I'll be comfortable. Medicine, medical science is still important. We are not talking only of compassion. We are talking about the marriage between science and compassion. Do please examine me. Do the essential examination. If there is a correctable problem, correct it. Even radiotherapy may significantly reduce the breathlessness in a couple of days. But certainly don't ventilate me, don't isolate me. Dr. Kale, absolutely, I need to be comfortable. After that, the only thing that will be important for me is having people who love me around me. The privilege of having my family with me is all important, more important than anything else, apart from physical comfort. So keep me with my family in your hospital room. Oxygen, try it. You can only give oxygen here. You may get it into the lungs, but unless my lungs are functioning, it will not be taken into the blood, it will not reach my blood. So, by all means, give me oxygen. Let me tell you what I will do. Ladies and gentlemen, I am only telling you what I actually do. If I have a patient like that, I would tell him and the family, I am going to put the oxygen on. Hey, anybody remembers from physiology how long does it take for equilibration between inspired air and arterial blood? The inspired oxygen. How long will it take to equilibrate with the arterial blood? 5 minutes. At the 3 to 5 minutes, at the most 7 minutes. In 10 minutes, you will know. What will you know? Don't look at the pulse oximeter, please. Look at me. In 10 minutes, if I am not feeling comfortable, take the horrible thing away. You have seen this. Patients pulling off the mask and then you putting in sticking plaster. I still pull it off. You tie me up. Horrible thing to do. If that oxygen is not making me feel better, please take it away. It is not a ritual like the last communion. No sanctity to it. This is something that we need to learn to think. If it is not benefiting the well-being, quality of life, any treatment is meaningless in the context of incurability. More than oxygen, what may help me is, who I see in front of me, if Sharon comes and sits beside me for a minute and tells me, we are going to look after you. We will make sure that you feel as well as possible. The feeling that you care for me, Sharin, Prakash, Nishi, Rang, Anthony, everybody, the feeling that you care for me will reassure me. Don't say empty words like don't worry. Hey, what do you mean? Advanced cancer, I am dying. If I don't worry, when am I going to worry? And I don't plan on worry. Worry comes in anyway. Those words are meaningless. I see you are suffering. I am going to look after you. Those words will be reassuring, precious words. Dr. Kale said, make the person comfortable. Here are the two medicines that may help. Even in that final stage, corticosteroids may help. They reduce the peritumor edema. And when the edema is less, the airways open up a little bit. The anesthetist in the group will remember that if the flow increases, if the space, the lumen increases by 1 millimeter, flow will increase 16 times. Therefore, corticosteroids might help. And remember, morphine is the miracle drug. It will not take away the breathing of distress completely. But hey, for my MD anesthesia examination, I was asked for one most important contraindication for morphine. I said dyspnea, and that was correct. That was correct at that time, half a century back. Now, morphine is the drug of choice in that situation. Even in COPD, even in any chronic lung disease. Of course, it is a small dose, maybe something like starting with 2.5 milligrams 4 times a day, immediately is morphine. What it does is it reduces the sensation of breathlessness. And these are the things. Why did I mention all that? Oh, Raju, the time is almost up, I know. Why did I mention all this? Because you see, during the 18 sessions, you will see how the management changes from what you read in Cecil and Loeb or from what you read in Bailey and Love in the context of advanced incurable illness management changes geared to comfort and well-being. Next, please. For which all three vital organs are important. Certainly, you need to have the knowledge and competence. You have to see how, you have to know how the corticosteroid helps and morphine, what dose and how safely to use it. You need the skill, even to touch, hold a hand comfortably and say, I am going to look after you. And also to do the necessary procedures, including maybe a intercostal drain. I know you all know how to do it. Maybe you can, if you try, you do it with 1/10 the pain. If you learn, if you have the skill, if you learn how to do local anesthesia properly and how to be effective. And of course, it has to be with the heart. Compassion has to be at the base of all everything that we do. Empathy, the ability to put yourself in that patient's shoe and think. And as the Astana Declaration of Public Health declared 3 years back, care has to reach people where they are. We all sit in our air-conditioned chambers in big hospitals, and the people who need us do not get it. This is why healthcare has to reach people where they are. In the Western countries, every person who is bedridden will get a visit from a district nurse every day. And if necessary, a specialist nurse will visit when required, and a doctor's visit happens when required. And this is possible in this country. This is already happening all over Delhi, so happening all over Kerala, happening in many cities. It is happening in Vaishak. It's happening in so many places. Can be done. It is less expensive than inpatient care. Next, please. And we will not forget the family. They are anxious. They need explanations. They need to be taught how to care for the patient. Next, please. And we initially said palliative care is physical, mental, and social well-being. It is not only emotional support, it's also social support. In Trivandrum, we look after the education of about 350 children. These are children from families that are ravaged by disease. And without this support, they would not get education. Next, please. And also some emotional support. And in case anybody wonders whether palliative care will have an impact on longevity, many doctors believe that palliative care will hasten death. It has been proved beyond doubt with a randomized double-blind study published in 2010 that palliative, when you give palliative care along with chemotherapy, people actually live longer. The pain is less, they eat better, their resistance is better, they tolerate chemotherapy more. Every star is in a place where we are doing some work in collaboration with others. This is something that we do, and I am telling you this because I very much would like it if we also have a new star in the place that you are working. We collaborate, we demonstrate, we educate, we facilitate. You will need help to accessing morphine. We have the experience, we'll be able to work with you. It will be a privilege to be able to work with you next month. And remember, you don't have to be a full-time palliative care physician necessarily. Dr. Deepam will continue to practice intensive care, but combining the principles of palliative care, and that's palliative care approach. I am a generalist palliative care person, meaning I have done only a few weeks course in palliative care. Sunil is a specialist palliative care. He has a postgraduate degree in palliative medicine. The most important point in this slide is not about the degrees. It's about palliative care approach, which has to be there in any clinical practice. Okay. No, sorry. I'll stop there. I've run out of time. 3 minutes past. Arun has been giving me nasty looks for the last 5 minutes. So I'll stop there. Arun, will you permit at least one question or two? Amarda is here.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think we have got a few points from this session, which I think will like to summarize. One is palliative care is not only for cancer patients or HIV patients, it is for anybody who has serious health-related suffering. And it is not only for the patients, but also for the family. So we know that when patient is suffering, the family will also suffer with the patient. Not only the family, even the neighbors. We know because if somebody near our house is suffering, we all tend to go to see them, and also we feel the pain. So we are also suffering. So we also need palliative care. Then palliative care aims to improve the quality of life of the patient as well as family. So those are a few important points. So I think if you have any doubts regarding the session, you can ask now.
When did Dr. Kale from Nagpur? When did this concept of palliative care started?
Thank you, Dr. Rai. Of course, we should know a bit of history, right? Thank you, Dr. Kale. Yes,
Yes.
in UK, about 65, 35, 55. In 1960, even before that, one nurse by name Cicely Saunders started looking after dying people. She found that dying people were rejected. She started looking after them. She developed the concept of palliative care. She did not call it palliative care. And then one doctor told her, unless you are a doctor, no doctor will listen to you. Does that sound familiar? So when told that, Cicely Saunders became a medical student, became a doctor in her 30s. So Dame Cicely Saunders is the founder of palliative care movement. In 1965, she formed a hospice called St. Christopher's Hospice, which is still a world leader in palliative care education. That was in London. In India, 20 years later, Dr. Lucito D'Souza, an oncosurgeon from Mumbai, built the first hospice in our country. That was Shanti Avedana Hospice, and that was the beginning of palliative care in our country.
Thank you. In the history, hello?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, sir.
In the history, it is written that even King Ashoka had some idea about the palliative care. Is it true?
Dr. Kale, you are also a philosopher.
No.
Very deep knowledge of everything. But
I am a surgeon.
no.
I am a surgeon by profession.
Doctor, this concern for suffering is part of humanity. It has always been there. And in Varanasi, dying people used to go there for spiritual care. They did not get pain relief. They may have died without relief, but they feel the touch of God. And in the West, even before Cicely Saunders, there were hospices. which would take care of people who are dying or suffering. What the transformation that happened between Ashoka's time and our time, with Cicely Saunders, is the introduction of science into it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it was
Right.
only compassion.
Yes.
The marriage between the brain and the heart, science
Right.
and compassion, that's at the heart of palliative care.
Right. Thank you so much.
Anybody else want to ask?
Excuse me.
Yes, doctor.
Madam.
Hello. I just wanted to know, okay, morphine used to be given earlier also when the patient was in pain and when means in the year 1965, not 65, 70 and all that, 75. Then I have seen patients getting morphine. So now what is the so important? Now you're giving so much importance. Like morphine was given earlier too.
Absolutely, doctor. I mean, madam, you are the professor of medicine, right?
No, I am a dermatologist.
Dermatologist. Okay. Like you are absolutely right. As a house surgeon,
Yes.
2 centuries back, as a house surgeon, I could write a prescription for morphine. The patient
Yes.
would go and buy it from the medical stores.
Yes.
Then but two differences. One, in 1985, India brought in a new law to prevent abuse. It was called the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. That restricted access to morphine completely, so that the consumption dropped steeply. That's one thing. Secondly, the use of morphine in those days generally was all for acute pain. The concept of using morphine on people with serious advanced illness was not there. Madam, while you were distracted, I was saying that at that time, in the time that you mentioned, it was mostly for acute pains, like
Yes.
post-operative, intensive care, etc. Whereas now we use it also in long-standing problems, especially in advanced cancer or similar conditions.
Thank you.
Hello. I have an experience of using morphine in my burn patients. Because in burn patients, I used to use 10 milligram of morphine every 6 hours. The patient was absolutely calm. That was allowed in a hospital because we have the license for morphine. So I have used it. This is my personal experience.
Burns is one of the most horrendous things to have, especially if it is a huge area. 40% burns or 50% burns. It's sheer hell. And absolutely, in the acute phase, it responds very well to opioids. Only thing is, with what you will learn in the next few weeks is, Dr. Kale, your patient was okay on 10 milligrams. That's better than nothing. But sometimes you have to titrate the dose. That will be discussed when we discuss pain. But I see that I have far exceeded time. My colleague, Dr. Amrita, is with me. Amrita is going to do a case presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Sunil, are you going to introduce or?
Yeah, so Dr. Amrita, who is a palliative care physician at Trivandrum Institute of Palliative Sciences, will be presenting the patient story. So, from the next week onward, one of you have to present a patient story. So, because this is a new batch, one of us is going to present. So, let's over to Amrita.
Thank you, sir. So moving on to the patient story, we have a 39-year-old male who was diagnosed with traumatic quadriparesis with stage 3 pressure sore on the sacral region and the left gluteal region. He came to us with complaints of constipation of 2 days and pressure sores over the sacral region and the gluteal region with a moderate type of pain, moderate pain in the hip region and complaints of urine leak. Moving on to the history of the illness, he had a history of fall while carrying weight, followed by neck pain and weakness of both limbs. and was diagnosed with traumatic quadriparesis in August 2015. He got admitted and treated from one of the government hospitals and was discharged after 1 month. After 6 months, he developed a pressure sore over the sacral and gluteal region, which was stage 4. And regarding the pain, he had pain over the hip region and the wound site, which was more than 2 weeks. And the pain over the hip region, it was an intermittent burning type of pain that scored around 5/10. And regarding the wound site, the pain was a continuous throbbing type of pain, and it scored around 4/10. His sleep was disturbed and his oral intake was reduced. So moving on to the examination findings, he was conscious, oriented, and the temperature was within the normal limit. His pulse was 82 beats per minute, and the respiration was 20 breaths per minute. BP was 120/70 mm of mercury, and all the systems were within the normal limit. Regarding the pressure zone, there was warmth and tenderness, exudates were present, and tunneling was present, and it was irregular in shape with foul smell. So significant routine investigations were done. His hemoglobin was 10 gram, total count was 34,000, and the platelet was 1.6 lakhs per microliter of blood. Creatinine was 0.9, serum sodium was 132, and potassium was 4. Regarding the psychosocial aspects, he was a 39-year-old unmarried man. He was living with his 65-year-old mother in a rented house. He had one sibling who was married and was living separately and was not caring or helping him. He used to be a manual laborer and was the breadwinner of the family. Now his mother is a manual labor and she is taking care of him. And the main source of income for him is the mother's daily wages, her pension, and some help from his friends. He has taken around 1.5 lakhs of debt from a private finance company for treatment purposes. He's a Christian devotee, but now he's not able to go to church, and this makes him very sad. So he says to his mother, "I don't think I can walk, so please don't spend money over my treatment." So the main concerns that the patient presented to us were the pressure zone, pain, and his financial issues. To summarize, a 39-year-old man with traumatic quadriparesis presenting with pressure zones over the sacral and left gluteal region, that's stage 4, with pain over the hip region. Moving on to the discussion points. So the first point to discuss would be, do we need to provide palliative care for this patient?
Amrita, you can see all the points.
Okay. And then next point would be, what are the problems faced by this patient and what all can be done for this patient and his mother? Thank you.
So, thank you, Amrita. So we have a 39-year-old man who met with an accident and became quadriplegic, and now he is having many problems. So the first question is, do we need to provide palliative care for this patient? So I would like anyone from this group to comment on this.
Yes, of course. Palliative care is needed for anybody suffering, any suffering, and the concept of palliative care is that only. So we need to address to that. But how is a different question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else? I see some messages. Yes. But can you elaborate why he needs palliative care? Sir has given one explanation, but anybody else want to elaborate more?
Should I speak?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
So this patient, not only this patient, but his mother also, they are suffering not only from physical problems, but also spiritually, because he feels that he cannot go to church and he really believes in, he's very religious. And another is the financial suffering that the family is going through. And also that they are now alone in this, that his brother and his family are not helping them. And he feels that he cannot walk, so that is attached to his overall suffering.
Okay, thank you. So there are many points in the chat. So palliative care, he has pain related to pressure sores. Palliative care to reduce the suffering and for moral support. For the pressure sore
मैं जो
care,
बोलना सुना जाता है ना, नेक्स्ट टाइम
may
जब मैं घर में
request
जाऊंगा,
all of you to please
you can
mute
get the link
yourself
here.
if you are not speaking.
I'll send the link.
Dr. Dipti says the patient has physical and mental agony. Dr. Gilja says his depression and no side to be. He is lot of pain, needs palliative care. Okay. And Dr. Vasudha says we need to start palliative care. Problems in this patient is financial and pain. Palliative therapy should be helped for his pain and financial health and needs counseling. Okay, so many of you have commented on this, and Dr. Paramjot says his problems include pain, spiritual component, financial issue, family needs. Sir, I would like you to comment on this and Amrita.
So Dr. Amrita left actually. There is an urgent patient call now.
Okay, Rajabal sir is there?
No, sir.
Huh?
No, sir. She is also not there.
No. Okay, okay. So as all of you have mentioned, this patient, if you look at different domains of suffering, this patient has physical problems. He has pain, pressure sore, then urinary leakage. All these are physical suffering. He has the emotional suffering because he was the main breadwinner, but now he is unable to go for job because of this quadriparesis. So, and he is thinking of that, will I be able to walk again? He himself says, no, I will, it may not be possible. And he says his mother that, please don't spend money on me. So, these are emotional or psychological problems. And he also has social problems because he is unable to meet his friends, and his social status has changed. So he is also facing the social isolation, as many of you have mentioned. He has financial problems, and he is a Christian devout, and he is unable to go to church, and he says it makes him it makes him feel bad. So he has these components: physical, psychological, social, financial, and spiritual domains of suffering. So because of these things, he has reduced quality of life. And you have to also look into his mother's perspective. So both patient as well as his mother is suffering. So we have to provide palliative care for this patient and family who has serious health-related suffering. And okay, so we actually covered both points. What are the problems faced by this patient, and do we need to provide palliative care for this patient? So, what all can be done for this patient and his mother? So we found out the problems and what can be done for those problems. Anybody?
Care for the ulcers,
Yeah.
talk to his brother and try to,
Oh.
can we do that?
Yes, yes. We can try anything.
Can we bring the brothers together and see that he also helps them out?
Yes.
It's not working. I don't know.
And try to solve his mother's problem, if any help we can do, so that the mother is not overstrained and unable, since she's an old lady, she should not, if we can do something, some help to her, we should see to it. Other than his physical treatment, like we should care for his mental treatment too.
Okay.
And try to give a helping hand, because of his isolation, his loneliness is making him feel like he doesn't want to live anymore.
Okay.
And
yeah.
and pain too, we'll definitely treat.
Yes.
There is a role for medical social worker.
Yes, sir. So can you explain more about that? Directly, please share the screen.
Regarding the sufferings of the mother, that she has to work for her son, the medical social worker can help them by giving some sort of schemes or some other things which can improve their lifestyle. In that way, they can be helped.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And anybody else want to comment on?
The main issue will remain as finance. That's a big thing. Whatever we think about and talk about, the finance remains the main issue in this particular case. And a continuous flow of finance it won't change, but it has to be
ऑनलाईन
continuous.
नाही तुम्ही पण करू शकला असता 3,000 रुपये फी आहे पण ते अटेंड करायला पाहिजे.
Dr. Vasudha, can you please mute yourself? Yeah. So finance is a main one of the main problems in this patient. So what can be done for that? How will you help the patient and family?
If he can do with his hands some little bit works, then he will be helpful.
Yes.
Some whatever work he can do with hands, lot of works. Yeah, that will be helpful, and it can change his emotional and psychological upset.
Okay.
He can give some work.
Yeah. Thank you.
He can be taught some skill.
Yeah. So rehabilitation is one of the main things that we need to teach the patient as well as the caregiver. It should be something which is acceptable for the patient and also suitable for the situation of the patient and his environment. If you are giving some heavy work, he will not be able to do that because he's quadriplegic. So as Madam told, some work which is suitable for the patient, like making some umbrella or making flowers or ornaments, something like that. So actually, if we are planning to start a palliative care unit, I think there should be some you should be also doing something in this regard for rehabilitation. In rehabilitation, I think you can also take help of the volunteers from the community. So that is one thing which we need to explore. So volunteers are one of the main pillars in palliative care who can help out the patient in many ways. So for the physical problems, we should need trained medical professionals. So a medical team including doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, physiatrists, social workers, etc. But for alleviating or reducing the psychosocial and spiritual problems, we can make use of the volunteers. Actually, if some volunteers from the nearby area of the patient can definitely help the patient in lot of ways, because they will be knowing each other, and the volunteer can find out, even help them financially. And there will be some government schemes which can be utilized for the patient. All those can tap into, and even they can approach NGOs. So there are many methods by which we can help the patient. But as all of us know, financial problem will be one of the biggest problems for the patient and family, and we will not be able to solve it completely. That's also a fact. So anybody want to comment more on anything regarding this patient and family? I think the Taran sir has mentioned about the role of medical social worker, which I think is very important. So a medical social worker can do many things. She can find out the problems of the patient as well as the mother, and even she can be utilized to help with finding out the government schemes. And she has many things that we usually don't do. So medical social worker is very important in the team. We can ask NGO intervene and raise funds for the financial problems. Yes. Yes, Dr. Vaibhav. And even we can talk to the bank manager and find out whether they can give some concession. So these are something which we regularly do, our social workers.
Sir, are there trained medical social workers in our community? I've heard of such medical social workers who work abroad in Western countries. So are these group of people actually there in the community level in our state?
No, we don't have such trained medical social workers. But in the government level, so if you look at the palliative care scene in Kerala, government palliative care units, I don't think they have provision for a medical social worker. But there are ASHA workers. But they are loaded with many other things, so they may not be able to help out. But if you look at our institution, we have about 6 to 7 doctors, but we have 10 medical social workers. So that's the importance of a medical social worker. But we don't have somebody who is actually doing helping in the community. So for that purpose, we are giving training to the volunteers and using them to support the patients and families.
In Goa, we have. Hello.
Yes, sir.
In Goa, we have some NGOs who voluntarily help these people, those who are in need. They are being helped
Yeah.
by the NGOs, and they have got their own social workers who look after their problems.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So, sir, if there are any volunteers who are interested in becoming medical social workers, is there any program available under the Pallium India that they can make use of?
Actually, volunteers cannot be made medical social workers because medical social work is it's a specialty, isn't it? So they are getting structured training and then they are becoming medical social workers. But the people from the community can be trained to do some aspect of medical social work. That's all what we can do. And we are doing volunteer training programs.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think for this patient, we found that the family has serious health-related suffering, and if you look at from the domains of suffering, the family has physical, psychological, social, and financial, spiritual suffering, which we have to relieve, and we have to at least give a try to solve those problems, rather than we are not making any steps to solve those. So we know that economic problem or financial problem is one of the biggest problems that patient and family face. We may be able to help, but not will not be able to help them completely. But we will try to do something for the patient and family in that aspect. But other aspect we can explore and do as much as possible. So I think we will wind up the session for today, and we will meet on next Wednesday with